Samira, and this is Amila, and welcome to A Happy Place, a podcast that celebrates inspiring personalities, self love, positivity, hope, and healing. Join us every month, where we sometimes speak directly to you with our poetry podcasts, and other days, where we bring you conversations with inspiring guest speakers. Our today's guest is Tim Rowe, known as the WildWolf on Instagram, an inspiring personality who's a poet and a coach. In this episode, we talked about his journey from being an accountant to a poet and a coach now, how poetry became his savior and a complete insight to his inspiring journey, and much more. Hi Tim, thank you for joining us today. We had such a great time and an honor collaborating with you to create an incredible piece of poetry, and here again, having you as a guest on our podcast. We were going through your journey and it inspired us to the very core, and we can't wait to share your story with our audience.
Hello, thank you very much for having me today. Look forward to seeing what you're going to ask. And the collaboration was absolutely amazing. So thank you for sharing your sort of words on my wall as well. So thank you very much.
It's such an honor for us, actually. Absolutely. So first of all, we would like you to take us through your wonderful journey till now.
Oh, that's quite a long one. My journey to now, I started writing, it's about 4 or 5 years ago now. And that was a journey of where my healing really properly began. I started doing many things before then, but poetry became the one which started unpicking my mind and my overthinking and everything going on for me. It started giving meaning to the story of my life, really. And I think that's the importance, is sometime you need to give some meaning to what we've experienced in life, good or bad. And that sort of journey into poetry for me was writing around the things that had happened in my life, good and bad, that I hadn't really properly processed. They'd happened to me, but I didn't know what they were. And poetry allowed me to reflect on them deeper and give a different context, different metaphor to them. And then sort of in that reflection, I actually started finding more hope and more gratitude for things that were really bad in my life, and seeing how they'd affected me and made me grow and give me gifts now, rather than actually always looking back and thinking they were negative. So the journey for me in my life was sort of focused more on the past 4 or 5 years of the poetry writing and where that's got me to now, and actually helping other people unpick their own stories of their life, and especially like the collaboration with ours. It's a piece of work that I really do love doing, because when I write with somebody and they give me the first half of a poem, I actually don't just respond to that poem. I spend a lot of time immersing into that poetry and feeling, what are they going through? How's their story? How do they sort of live in the world right now? What are they going through? What are they struggling to find words for? And then I write the second half, and effectively as them, or something that I hope will sort of remedy something in them, and give it a little bit of healing. So yeah, I say my journey is quite different now to what it used to be. But that's just a little bit of an insight into where I am now and where I've been, if that helps.
That is so inspiring and absolutely amazing. I know, so amazing. So what is poetry for you, and how do you think that people are perceiving poetry nowadays?
Oh, good question. So just to say, I don't know the questions. I asked not to know the questions, so I like to be sort of caught off guard. So poetry nowadays, I sort of don't read as much poetry as I probably should have. I didn't grow up reading poetry. There's a lot of rules around poetry traditionally, and in the language, and I don't like that. Poetry for me shouldn't have rules, shouldn't have boundaries.
Right.
It is how we make sense of our emotion, how we make sense of the world around us. And sometimes a single word does not give us sort of the definition of how it affects us, how we feel it, how important something is to us. And for me, poetry allows us to expand the language, and particularly the English language, which other languages in the world, like Japanese, for example, they have words which you can use to describe a whole metaphor. We don't technically have that in English language, and we need to piece these words together to give it context. And I see poetry now as a more of a healing and an expression whereby things are happening in life, and there's a lot more depression, there's a lot more emotional imbalances, and a lot of confusion in society. And poetry is allowing us to expand the language to try to make sense of it. Even in our own minds, like some of the poems people will not understand. But for me, poetry is actual pivotal in this next phase, and it has been in history as well, where we look at the era of Shakespeare, who taught us a lot about love and a lot about different aspects of language and how to express. And we've had poetry through music, we've had it through rap, we've had it through different stages. But I feel what's happening now is people are using and coming back into poetry to try to express how they feel.
I know, that's so beautiful the way you express that. We absolutely love that. The very thought itself is amazing.
Thank you.
So I absolutely love your IG page, and we're so curious to know how WildWolf happened, and actually why WildWolf exactly, the particular username.
So the WildWolf. So the WildWolf was me creating something from my first poem. So my first poem I ever wrote, it happened without me knowing. I was at work looking out the window and had a computer screen I was an accountant, still am an accountant, just don't operate as an accountant anymore. And I had these numbers on the screen, and next I think I looked down and I'd scribbled on a pad these words, and it was like, "Be a wild wolf, do not suffer to sacrilege of the society of the sheep around you. Live the life you deserve to live." And I didn't know where those words came from. They just sort of fell out for me, and they were on page, and they made sense, but it actually asked the bigger question of, what am I doing with my life? Who am I? I can't keep doing this. It was sort of, life was taking its toll, but I wasn't living. It was just, life was happening around me, and the realization I wasn't really happy in life. And no matter what I was doing, I was just trying to cover it up. So what I did, showed somebody, and they went, "Wow, that's quite profound." And all of a sudden I wrote something different, wrote something more, and it just kept filling up this pad. And I thought, well, I was told to put it on Instagram, and I set up an account called The Wild Wolf. No one knew me. It was completely anonymous. And I started posting, and people started liking. And the more they liked, the more I wrote, the more I sort of expressed myself. And The Wild Wolf was then born. And I then started running collaborations, competitions. I'm not sure if you remember those. I'm not sure if we were sort of connected by them. But
I think we also took part in them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I thought you did. Yeah,
we did. Yeah.
And it was a complete different concept, and I actually really enjoyed them in the sense of I was starting the poem and then allowing everyone else to finish them, and it allowed people to express themselves, but no one knew what my metaphor was or why or how. And it opened up a whole new world of, actually, we make a lot of assumptions, we make a lot of feelings, but it just needs somebody to be a catalyst in us actually expressing ourselves and showing some vulnerability and going in different directions. And the competition started growing the page quite organically, and I was like, wow, okay. And then the likes kept going up, and I was like, okay, I'm just this hidden man behind this wolf image. And what do I do with it? And then I sort of carried on writing, carried on doing the collaboration. If you look at my page as it stands now, it's sort of, you will see a journey from black and white into a little bit of color, a little bit more expression. And it really is a journey of my life over the past 4 or 5 years, in the sense of the nervousness to express himself in black and white form. It's the darkest time. It's the sort of where I was processing a lot. And then you'll see color becoming into the page, and you start seeing me actually writing more caption and going deeper and deeper and deeper. And And now you're looking at it from a different aspect where the page is integrating with a lot more personal imagery. It's bringing myself in, it's bringing my word in, my spoken words coming in. And now it's sort of presenting into the space where I'm about to move into, is where I'm coaching and helping others express themselves in the way that I've done over the 4 or 5 years to heal myself, and the toolkit that I use to survive through depressions, anxieties, and PTSDs, which I had and was labeled with. But the page is really a sort of representation of a man going from extreme position of not knowing where he belongs in the world to starting to own who he is and finding a balance between the masculine and femininity within him. So yeah, that's the sort of journey in the page. And for me, I sort of looked at it and went and exposed myself and put my name up there now, and that took years and years to do. To have that confidence to do that. And yeah, every day with that page is an interesting one. Exposing yourself to the world is always going to be interesting. And what I have found is that the community on Instagram has been sort of a lifesaver in some respects. But
I totally agree.
Yeah, and yourselves, and we connected on there. We've spoken, we've had conversations in the past, we've shared words, and sometimes that's just what you need. Is that there could be a stranger across the world that might just get you, might just understand who you are. Yeah, and I think opening up that page, they inspired me to go deeper than I ever thought I would go deep into myself, and they're all a blessing in the sense of they made who I am now, through that page and through the following. So I owe a lot to the people there, really.
And that's amazing. And to some extent, I think we can relate with you on that, because we have been like similar situations in the sense that like we started our page during the pandemic as well. And yeah, we were having some situations where we were like down. So like literally the page literally like lifted us up. And as you said, the people over there, it's such a safe place to be in. We're like literally grateful for that place. I know.
And your page has always been interesting. Sort of when we first connected, you had a lot of ambition with where you wanted to go with it, and seeing the podcast. And when we reconnected recently, because Instagram and the way it works is people disappear and then they come back out the blue. They're never gone. They're there somewhere in the mist, and then you'll get a message one day, and it's like, oh, yeah, I remember you. And it's great to see that you've continued to sort of growing it and all the work. You've got merchandise and everything. So I was quite impressed when actually I saw that you followed through with a lot of things you wanted to. So I'm really grateful that you've done.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you reconnected as well. I know, we absolutely loved your page, and like you were actually not there for a while, I guess. Right?
Yeah, I disappeared. So last year I really did disappear. Last year I couldn't write. Last year.
I know.
Thank you. I do disappear though. I do disappear, but I always do come back, and usually there's a reason.
And that's the best part.
Yeah. Last year was a struggle one. I couldn't write last year. There was too much going on, and I got diagnosed with 2 conditions last year, which I had to take a lot of time out. My thoughts weren't working as well, but managed to get them under control, and sort of coming back this year is a whole different aspect of my work, I think. So hopefully people are still liking it, but it's a lot more me coming through now. So
we absolutely love it. Love your work. Actually. So take us through your work. So like you do coach. So like how do you help people to get out of depression, and like with your own experiences as well, how do you help people with that?
That's an interesting one, because the first thing I say is I'm not a therapist. I am a coach, and I think coaches are really underrated in what they can do. I sort of work with embodiment is predominantly been doing that for a few years, but what the word embodiment means is that we're actually looking at the whole person and seeing how is somebody, how are they feeling, how do they see things, how do they reflect on things, and then bringing it into their body. So how do they reflect that in their body? How's their movement? And it really is the whole system of our human. And what therapy is doing is, it's great to talk. It's great to have a conversation, talk things through. What I tend to do is look more at how are you now, and how are you responding to things, and able to move forward. So can I help somebody make a change? One of the sort of processes I use is clean language, which is working with metaphorical landscapes. And that's effectively coaching with poetry, and it is what I tend to tell people is, having a 90-minute conversation where you're telling me everything in poetry. I don't know what you're talking about half the time, because metaphors we don't always understand, they're personal. So it allows somebody and you're just a guide to allow them to work through them, to find their own sort of solution. And then working with the body and embodying that, you can make some real transitions especially with depression, is in those things from the past that happened to us. We can get stuck in them. We can continue to reflect on them. For me, I remember actually constantly, because I had depression, anxiety, PTSD, and they're all interconnected for me. And one of the things, I always used to reflect on the same memory, and it would continually replay, one of the worst memories of my life. And it would continually replay. And it was like, well, how am I replaying this memory? Why can't I gain control of it? Why can't I press stop and move on? And I tried everything to try to press pause, to try to stop. And what I ended up doing is using the poetry to reflect in that moment and sort of understand it. And then I went, well, how do I shift it in me? Because whenever this memory comes in, I feel scared, but it's a memory. It's not affecting me in the now. So what I tend to sort of look at it is, depression for me, I gave it a different label, different metaphor. For me, depression sounds like it's not going to go away. It's a label that's going to stick with me and it's not going to disappear. So I tend to sort of refer to that as a fear of the past. And that encompasses guilt and shame of the past and everything else, because we can't actually change anything that's happened in our life. We can't change the past. But a lot of things that happened in that past related to trauma served us well in those times. Like, it might have saved us from something, but what we've stored in our system is that moment from back then, and it no longer serves us anymore. So it's about finding new ways in how to process it and work it through our system, work it through our mind. And coaching is really, really helpful with that. And really good results for some clients, where I've even used poetry to help a client and work through it and express themselves. But I find that there is a balance between understanding yourself, bringing awareness to yourself, being able to regulate your emotions, and understand why they're happening and how to control them a bit better. And that allows you to take leadership and control over moving forward and coming back to the moment that we're actually in now. So I tend to do a lot of that work around there, and focusing a lot more on men's work going forward as well. So that's really interesting piece where men I think are typically not great with emotion, and if we can actually help work that out and without being too emotional with them, that there are ways that we can work on that for men. I hope that answers the question.
We're so glad you're doing this, actually. It's amazing.
Thank you. It is an interesting piece, and what I've been doing is learning all the tools over the past 4 or 5 years. And right now, I'm doing the work, and we're just about to push it out. I'm going to be looking to do retreats from October, hopefully bringing groups together, starting working with them, and then expanding that more and more over the next year, to sort of travel around and do some of this work with people as well. So it's now sort of getting to the point where I've done the learning, I know what I can do, and I know how to help people. It's now just bringing those toolkits out and starting to work with more and more people, really. So, yeah.
That's awesome. You just answered the next question, actually.
Oh, okay.
About the workshops you'll be hosting and the projects you'll be working on.
Okay. The workshops and projects, there's quite a few. So the first project that will be coming out very soon, which is probably in the next week, will be my podcast.
Oh, really?
Wow. Yeah, you're hearing it here first.
We
I've
can't
had the I've had the logo prepared for a while now, and that would be called Conversations with Wolves.
Cool.
So, do you like that one?
We love it. Yeah, absolutely. We're so looking forward for it. Absolutely.
So there's a few different concepts that we're working on at the moment, in the sense of, well, I sold everything in my life 2 years ago, my house and everything else, to invest in primarily answering the question of how do we prevent suicide? How do we stop men, particularly? There's sort of growing numbers. And that's what my journey really is, to try to make a difference, especially in men's life, because I feel if we can work with men and hopefully see men become more back into their body and into themselves and understanding themselves more and more, and we can hold space for more more children, more partners, more families, and that's what I'm trying to do, is that sort of core, is understanding and try to prevent these situations of depression in men and anxieties in men. And so Conversations with Wolves, one of the things is, there is a lot of people doing some great work, but they talk in very complex language. And it's very hard to understand some of the scientific languages, some of the language that people speak around these things. And what I'm trying to do with Conversation with Wolves is speak to these people that are very intelligent, doing great work, even the creatives, the musicians, the artists, the facilitators, the breath workers, every aspect, neuroscientists, and try to bring it back into a language that everyone understands, so it can make sense, using metaphor, using analogies, using a bit of humor, using things to try to sort of connect the dots with people. So Conversation with Wolves, that's the podcast. First one will be out, and it'll be with Jacob Strong from Alchemy Brothers. And that leads into Manifest, which is in September. I believe it's the 5th to the 8th of September in Portugal. So I'll be a facilitator at Manifest, which is a festival for 100 men, where we're trying to bring 100 men together, and there'll be workshops, facilitations, there'll be temescals, there'll be breathwork, there'll be ice baths, there'll be music, there'll be poetry. I'll be doing some work with vulnerability and emotions, as well as energy working, and so all those aspects, but it's for men. It's one of the first ones in this level, so we're hoping to make a big difference there. And yeah, the workshops and retreats that I'm looking at will be, I'm probably looking at basically the first ones being in Guernsey, and I'm looking at one in the UK as well, and trying to do monthly, where can bring 9 to 18 people together to start working together, to find better sense around emotions. How do they handle love? How do they handle anger? What does that mean for them? Is there a better way? How to regulate those things? How to connect with each other? So it's going to be all those works. But actually, at the theme underlining it will be my poetry, in the sense of utilizing my own experience and own working through my own journey and healing. So yeah, all that's to come. And that'll all be on my page, The WildWolf. We've just launched in TikTok as well. So that's a new journey as well. So quite a lot going on, but there's there. And I'll be doing one-to-one work as well. So coaching, one-to-one work and things like that.
That is amazing. It's definitely going to help a lot of people. Yeah. I'm so excited for you as well. It's amazing. Absolutely. And all the very best.
Thank you.
I know. I'm so excited for you. So
Thank you.
yeah. So how does it make you to feel, to help people, to help through your work?
It's a very interesting questions. I get quite emotional with working with people. This work is very underrated. I've got a lot of respect for people in therapy, sort of people giving therapy, giving coaching, also people in the sort of capacities of nurses and the industries that care about people, because they're not the highest paid roles in most sense. And these positions that you're holding space for people and looking after people, it can be draining. The big investment is actually looking after yourself while you're doing this, and trying not to get yourself in a stressful state of absorbing all their emotional aspects. And it's very hard. Like if somebody tells you something and you're like, wow, and you're feeling that you want to hold space for them, and you sort of work them through it, but it still lingers in you. So doing it, there's a massive reward. You feel it, and it's more humbling that somebody has been arrived in your life for you to work with, and you see them grow, and it's really humbling to see that. It's that's just a gift. And when you see them sort of thriving in life and see them walk away, and you see how they sort of respond in life, what happens for them after that healing process has gone on. I guess there's an analogy and a metaphor that I've used is last year I watched these magpies flying from the nest in the tree, and you had an adult magpie come down, and each little baby magpie was on the tree branch, and an adult magpie would come and then take the little magpie and fly it into the sky, take it for a loop, and then bring it back and onto another branch, and then it would take the next one. And effectively that's how it feels. It's sort of, I feel like it's just guiding people through what they need and holding them while they're doing it. Is the best way to describe this work. And you do sort of have that bond, but it is very, very humbling doing it.
Absolutely gorgeous. So we found out that you are credited in Jikiden Reiki. Not sure if I pronounced that right. That's so interesting. Yeah. I'm so curious to know what it is exactly about. So would you like to share a bit about it?
Yeah, so Jikiden Reiki, it's I started doing energy healing work before I knew what Reiki was. So Reiki is a traditional Japanese healing, hands-on healing method. And it was, must have been about 4 years ago now. And all of a sudden I was doing a lot of work on myself, a lot of time in meditation, a lot of poetry writing. And I really did spend 2 years meditating and writing. I sort of took 2 years out of life a little bit. And at some point my hands just sparked up with, like, it felt like there was some electricity in them. It was just, they were hot, they were warm, one was cold, and it was just like the hands could feel different things. And then I started sort of doing things like somebody would say they have a headache, and I would put my hand on it, and they're like, what do you do? The headache's disappeared. And I started researching into it, like, what is this thing? And I came across Reiki, and I went for some Reiki, and I sort of experienced it, and I was like, actually, this seems similar. But I got initially introduced into Western Reiki, Yusai Reiki, and when I got taught that, I was like, there's something missing here, that it doesn't feel the authentic way. And so the Jikiden Reiki is actually the authentic Japanese route. It's sort of, it's not changed since it was originally created. And it is a hands-on healing, which was originally used to heal people through any ailment, physical, mentally. So in up to World War II is very much used still in the Navy as well of Japan to heal people. So yeah, I did some training with Rika Tanaka in London. She's the president of the association, and it was an eye-opener in the sense of understanding the Japanese culture, the rituals around it, and how that works. And it really is a way of life, a way of being, and a way of understanding how our system works and how our energy system works, how we hold trauma in the body, how we can actually release it. And it's a way of releasing. A lot of sort of Western culture is your chiropractic, your physical sort of adjustments on the body to try and release it, and try to, if you've got a pain, you go to a chiropractor, get it cracked back in. Reiki is just really sort of channeling the energy and almost giving just love into the space, into the body, and giving it a bit of a different texture. And I had some great results. I've had people come in 2 years, they've been having injections on their shoulder, been waiting for surgery and 1 or 2 appointments, they're walking out with no pain and no physical issues. And it really can be that effective if for healing people. But it's a hands-on healing. I hope that answers in a long way, but
It definitely,
yeah.
it definitely does. It's so interesting. Yeah, like we're not so familiar for that. It's really inspiring to know that. Thank you for sharing with us. I know. So, what drove you to become a therapy coach, and how has it changed your life?
Oh, so I was an accountant from a young age. So I qualified and as a technical audit manager at 22.
It's amazing.
And I worked in finance. I worked for some of the largest organizations from here, and I was developing systems behind the back end and automating fund administration for some of the largest private equity funds in the world, and actually for the largest fund in the world. And then I sort of had 3 burnouts. I sort of got divorced 11, 12 years ago, and had difficulties with access to my children, and sort of I loved my children and wanted more, and I kept going on this spiral of depression, anxiety and PTSD, but I would focus more on work. So I became, what we end up doing is usually find ways to cope. My coping mechanism was becoming work based, and I also sort of then counteracted that work and stress of work with drinking, with alcohol, with a bottle of wine, or going out and socializing, and it wasn't healthy. And I had 3 real burnout stages in my life in a period of those years, and I said that's enough. Like I can't do this anymore. I need a change. This lifestyle isn't working for me anymore. And I went and said, well, I'm fixing everyone else's issues in finance and their solution, and I'm the problem right now. So I went to look for the solution for myself. And as I mentioned before, the poetry became that sort of catalyst into that, and unpicking myself showed me that actually I have the gifts and tools to help others. And I realized that actually I need to do some training to do that, and I can't just go out and help people. So then I started learning more and more and more and adding more on. And now I've built this different toolkit, my own little toolkit of different experiences, and I'm still adding things. I've just come back from a 3-week trip, which was a nature and embodiment immersion with Mark Walsh in Slovenia, which was absolutely eye-opening for me. And then did Tamalpa Life Art Therapy weekend in Kent, and did a lot of cultural immersion through Croatia, Slovenia, and then I did 6 countries in 3 weeks. And when I do these experiences, it's to put myself outside the comfort zone, to learn, to grow, and then learn things that can help others. And I really want people to know that there's ways that they can get through it without having to go through all that pain. And I'm trying to find the quicker ways, which bits work, which bits don't. And yeah, that's where I've got to. That's how it happened. That's why it happened. And now I can't go back. Now it's sort of, I've opened up this whole world of things, and it's a constant striving to learn more and understand more of how things can help people, and how to make that happen, really. So that's my sort of where I'm at and where I'm going, really, with this.
Awesome. It's amazing, actually. It's actually amazing to see how you have changed all that into this positive, yeah, it's just amazing.
It's an interesting one with that. It's I sort of you tend to hear me on my page. There's a new thing, and I don't think anyone ever has actually understood what the metaphor really means. But each time I post a collab now, there's always 3 posts that come with it. So there's a collab post, then there's a post from me personally, and then there's another post which is a question. And if you actually look on the wall now, there's always the same metaphor in each of those posts for the question, which is called rerouting the rivers. And
I look to it, I know.
Have you spotted that?
Not really, no? Not really.
No.
Actually.
So for example, if I'm just going to bring up my page just so I can share the last one, because what these are my way of started to shift a little bit of things around the world, because rerouting the rivers, there's a what happened in Yellowstone in America is when they introduced wolves back into the wild, the wolves actually rerouted the rivers naturally by shifting the environment around them, and all the animals and everything else started correcting. And if anyone watches the documentary about Yellowstone, wolves actually really changed that and saved Yellowstone Park in America. And the beavers came then, but the rivers actually shifted. They moved, and the animals moved. And so rerouting the rivers is a metaphor for actually trying to help us ask deeper questions of ourselves, and just going a little bit deeper to try to sort of shift our own metaphors in life from negative to positive, and sort of finding some love in the darkness as well, because one of the biggest things for me is if we ignore our darkness, we can never truly find a light. How do we know what love is if we don't embrace that dark period of our life where everyone's got some dark moments and we try to ignore them, try to bury them down? And this rerouting the rivers is trying to sort of find and unpick those to say, look, it's safe to have a look at those darker bits, because when you find them, you can actually see the lighter ones a lot better, and reroute your own metaphors, reroute your own rivers. So yeah, that's coming through there as well.
That is absolutely amazing. So, except for poetry, what gives you hope and positivity?
Sorry, say that again. I didn't hear the
Except
last
for
bit.
except for poetry, what gives you hope and positivity?
I do quite a lot actually in nature. So every day there'll be an element of nature into my world. Currently, I'm doing a lot of barefoot walking. And barefoot walking is helping me rebuild an injury. So the last year sort of has suffered my spine, and they told me that I need spinal surgery at the start of the year. And I said no, and what I'm doing is trying to fix that myself. So what I'm doing is a lot of barefoot, a lot of nature immersion to try to rebalance the body. And when we do barefoot walking, that slows us down and we start seeing things around us more. So that definitely brings a lot more positivity into my life. Getting outside, I have to be outside. I'm not usually inside much. If a client sees me, I'll tend to try to be outside. You usually find me in a coffee shop, even if it's raining outside. And that's where I sort of find my sort of home, really, is if I've got the air around me, and I need to be near the sea or some water source. But nature is a big part of it. It's a poetry in nature.
Nature is absolutely therapeutic and it's healing in every possible way.
Yeah, we can actually heal so much just being in nature.
True. Absolutely.
And every single retreat I do will be probably about 50-50 of doing work and doing nature.
Absolutely. That's amazing. And what inspires you to write, except for what you've been through personally?
So inspiring to write, I tend to feel into me and see what I feel. I wake up in the morning and go, how do I feel today? How am I feeling in the body? What needs to be dealt with? What sort of mood I'm in? And that's usually my personal catalyst to sort of start writing. And then there's certain people that will come into my life, and they'll come out of the blue and they'll spark something in us, whether or not it's an emotion, a love, a sort of curiosity. Those people sort of spark that. And I don't try to control it. If it comes up, the words come up and they go out and they go onto page. And then it will just be a conversation. Somebody will say something. I'm like, that's a really good idea. And I did one, the coffee barista, and there'll be a few more of those coming as well. And that was just the concept of what if we looked at somebody based on their coffee order and tried to understand them. So people watching is always a good inspiration. Nature's a good inspiration. And sometimes there's a bit more comedy, just like I just need to make sense of it or have a laugh about something, and I don't always put those out, and then they're starting to come out a little bit more. But yeah, there's inspiration in everything. If we actually take the time to pause and look at aspects of the whole of life, there's always an inspiration to write. It's whether or not we can actually slow ourselves down enough to actually see the metaphors, see the world around us, to actually write it.
That's so cool. So if you have to describe yourself and your journey in one word, what would that be?
Wild, probably. It'd probably be wild. Yeah, I would say probably wild. I think that one is the sort of one, and I see wild differently. So
Yeah,
wild is a
positive.
massive metaphor. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Love that. So for people who are facing difficulties with their mental health, what advices would you give them?
Anyone struggling with mental health, if they really are struggling, sorry, that was my bird in the background. If you can hear that.
We can do background noises too. Yeah.
Yeah. It's if anyone is struggling with mental health, it's making sure that you ask and call for help. There's no need to be fighting in your own. There's always someone that's going to listen, always someone that will be there to hold space for you. If you get a knockback from somebody, that's not on you, that's on them. And somebody will always listen. So don't give up. I've been in places and supported people where I've seen them give up, and I've helped them through that. And it is scary. When mental health catches up on us, and you're in a space you don't know what you're doing, you're confused. Your thoughts are not your own anymore. Something takes over, and you can consider yourself as a failure in every aspect of life. Everything is against you. It's not just one thing. It might be one thing that catalysts it, but it can send you into the spiral. And when you're in there, it can be hard to see the beauty in anything. And the first thing in there is just try to find an element of gratitude for one aspect of life around you right at that point. And then add another one, because no matter where we are, there's always something to be grateful for in life. There really is. And if you can just breathe into that moment, breath is so paramount as well. So call for help, find some gratitude, and actually breathe into that gratitude. So take a deep breath in and hold it and just relax, because everything passes. I've been there, and everyone's journey is different, and someone might be going through something much worse than I was. But there is always a way back. There's always someone there.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's such an important thing you said. So that was our last question for the day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is absolutely amazing. And we wish you all the very best for everything you already do and everything ahead of you. And thank you for all the amazing work that you do, actually. You're truly an inspiration. And as we always say, we need more people like you. It was truly an honor and pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. And yeah, it's crazy. If you asked me 4 or 5 years ago, would we interviewed on a podcast about poetry, I would have said no way. So thank you very much for having me. And yeah, and if anyone has any questions, anyone sort of wants to reach out, then my page is there. And sort of, yeah, I can sometimes.
We're going to link your page so that anyone wants to reach out to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And yeah, I wish you best with your podcast and everything you're doing as well. It's amazing work.
Thank you so much, and all the very best for your podcast. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Hope you are as inspired as we are. To connect with Tim, you can find the link to his Instagram in the description section. Also, do let us know what you think about this episode. You can tag us on Instagram so that we can read and repost your precious feedback. You can find the link to our Instagram as well in the description section. Thank you so much once again to all of you who stayed with us till the end. We hope to bring you more and more inspiring conversations and your most loved poetry-filled episodes. Until next time, stay inspired, keep inspiring, keep smiling wide, wider, and brighter.